McDonald's French fries here have 11 ingredients, whereas in the UK they only have three: potatoes, oil, and sea salt. 11 ingredients here, including that dimethylpolysiloxane, which is can be preserved with formaldehyde according to the FDA, a neurotoxin. Okay. It also has TBHQ, which is another autoimmune disruptor in your body as well. An ingredient that you'd find in Reese's peanut butter cups too. You'd find it here in the United States, but not in Japan. So
The girls
this
are
is stuff.
crying in the booth right now. Hey, Heal Squad! Today is going to change the way you think about what's on your plate. I'm so excited for this episode. But first, our quote of the day. You've heard the phrase, you are what you eat. But the truth is, we are what we digest and absorb. That is from our guest today, Vani Hari. I am so excited to be joined by her today. She's also known as the Food Babe, if you're on Instagram, friends. She is a fearless food activist, best-selling author, co-founder of the brand Truvani. Vani has made it her mission to expose what's really going on in the food industry, revealing hidden chemicals and harmful ingredients that major corporations don't want you to know about. She's helped push companies like Kraft and Subway, Starbucks, all to adopt healthier practices. Today, she's here to share what you need to know to protect yourself and, of course, your family in a system that is often stacked against us. So if you've ever wondered what's really in your food, here it comes, Con. Vani, I am so excited to have you here today. I had who I believe might be one of your friends as well, Jillian Michaels, on. We sat with her recently, and
Yeah, she's my hero.
yeah, well, you're my new hero now too, because I was not aware of you before. Forgive my blood sugar monitor. I wasn't aware of you before this roundtable. I don't know how I wasn't. I was aware of Truvani, funny enough. I didn't know that was yours.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was aware of Truvani, so I guess I was aware of you. But when I saw you railing against the food industry at this roundtable, I was like, we need her on the show. She needs to come on and help educate us, because we always say, like Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you can do better. And a lot of us don't know better. A lot of us are starting to hear about red dyes and things like that. It's really hard to believe sometimes that companies that have sold themselves as family friendly would actually not have our best interests at heart. And I think one of the biggest things is, as you have so clearly exposed, the differences between certain items on our shelves and certain items in European shelves. Same company, same product, different ingredients, different standards. They're already making better, cleaner versions for Europe, but then for us, they're like, well, they're not putting up any fights, so give them the shit. This is just crazy to me. So I'm excited to hear about your journey to this spot. We're going to get into everybody, the things that are on the shelves that are killing us and killing our kids and hurting us. But I was really blown away to hear your origin story, because when I saw an interview of you, you instantly said that you were the daughter of two Indian immigrants. And I go, here it comes. She grew up just like me, I bet, eating clean and eating healthy. My mom and dad grew, their vegetables in a garden, no matter how poor we were. And yours was the complete opposite. Was not expecting it. So will you share with the Heal Squad your journey that basically led you to become the Food Babe?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up with two immigrant Indian parents, and my dad came here in the 1960s to go to school. And he was summoned back from his mom to come back to the to go back to India to marry my mother, who was in an arranged marriage. So he had like basically a pick of five different women. He met my mom, was like, she's the one. They get married a few days later. She gets whisked away on her honeymoon. She literally leaves her house, doesn't even know she's about to get married, gets married, leaves all of her stuff behind, and goes to live in the United States for the rest of her life. And my dad's like, if we're going to live in America, we're going to eat like Americans. And here's a McDonald's hamburger. And this is my mom, who is from India. First of all, the cow is sacred there. She's never had beef in her entire life. And at the age of 22 is now presented with this McDonald's hamburger and is like, okay, so this is what you eat here in America. I get it. Like, I see what's happening, right? And so that was the start of my parents relying on the American food culture and the standard American diet to feed their children, me and my brother. And even though my mom quickly realized that the American diet wasn't right for her, she ended up going back to her traditional foods and making food from scratch every single night. But because it looked so different and tasted different and smelled different, I shunned it as a kid, and so did my brother because we just wanted to fit in. We were the only Indian family in our school,
Mm-hmm.
and all the kids around the block are eating things out of a box or a package, and we wanted to be like them.
Yeah.
And so I begged for my birthdays to be at Burger King and McDonald's, and I had them there, right? And my parents loved the fact that the food was really cheap, especially my dad, and so he would do kind of anything to kind of keep us full because again the Indian culture where he grew up, there were so many people living in poverty and famine, and now we had access to all of this food readily available and it was super cheap. And for both my parents who were teachers, that was really appealing as well because they could feed a family really quickly. They wouldn't have to spend a lot of time. They're working, trying to provide for their family and build a life here. And you know, as a result, I was a super sick child as well. And when my parents took me to the doctor's offices, no one ever asked me, like, or them, what are you feeding your children? What is it that they're eating? They just would write a prescription for a drug. And I ended up on 9 prescription drugs, 2 surgeries by my early 20s. And that's when I hit rock bottom to the point where I knew something was wrong and I wanted to figure out how to get healthy because it was recovering from an appendectomy in the hospital. And I remember I was 22 years old and I was looking around and it was December and all my friends are going to these holiday parties. They're shopping for the holidays. They're getting ready for Christmas. And I'm in this hospital room with, cuts open of my abdominal muscles, can't sit up, and I'm in excruciating pain and going like, what is going on? Like, this is not right. I'm so young. Like, this, I should be going out and having fun. Like, why did I go through this? And all the doctors around me told me, your appendix, you don't need it. It's an easy surgery. You'll get it out and you'll feel better in a month. That kind of situation where something just didn't sit right with me with even that information, to the point where I started to use this knowledge I had gained in high school, where I was a top tier debater, went to debate camp every summer and was #1 in the state 3 years in a row, and recruited to college to be in debate. And I love debate. It was so much fun because I would research these topics and get really deep into it. And one year's topic when I was in high school was healthcare. And I just remember how screwed up the healthcare system was. And I was just like, well, wait a minute. And I started to connect the dots to my own health. And I started to channel that same ability to research. And back then we didn't have Google, so it wasn't like I could just find everything on the web. I had to actually go to the library, check out journals, look at the microfiche, do all of that work. And so I did the same thing with my health, and I would check out huge books about nutrition to teach myself like what was going on. And I found out, the first thing I found out, which was just blew my mind, was the appendix is actually a useful organ. Of course, God put it there for a reason, right?
Wait. I'm so
Yes.
glad you're explaining this, because the one question I've had in my mind, but I'm like, don't interrupt, is I thought the appendix is useless. I thought it wasn't necessary. And how is that tied to health? But go on.
Yeah. So it actually populates the gut with good bacteria. And when it becomes inflamed, it's because your body is in an inflammatory autoimmune response.
No
So it's
way.
literally, yes, appendicitis is a modern disease based on what we're eating. So this just blew my mind.
Is
because
there
I'm
a
like,
rise? Like, I'm sure you've done research. Is there like some statistic involved with this?
oh, I mean, there's definitely a rise in it, and there's definitely a statistics in it, and the fact that this even happens to the point where the only solution doctors have is to remove the appendix, right? Like, I know if I was probably monitoring my body at the time, the stress levels, the different metabolic factors of like how I was living my life, that I probably could have reversed the situation to the point where I wouldn't have to take an organ out of my body.
Yeah.
But there was no questions being asked every time I went into a doctor's office to even lead up to that point. It was already too late at that point. And
Which is crazy, because I've known this in the last however many years, but may I ask how old you are?
I'm 45.
Okay, so we're the same age. I'm 46. I'm shocked that the doctors of that day weren't asking what you were eating, because I feel like the doctors of that day were still, you know, different, maybe a little bit better than what we're dealing with now. So I'm
Well,
surprised.
definitely, yeah, definitely not around here in North Carolina. Anyways, I've lived here all my life, and it wasn't the case here. And so, anyways, I went through that experience, and I started to eliminate chemicals from my diet, and that was the first thing that I did because when I checked out those big books on nutrition, one of the concepts in one of the books, it was called Conscious Eating by Gabriel Cousens, and in there he talked about how everything in the middle of the grocery store is dead. And that's how I felt for most of my life, dead, like a zombie.
Wow.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to eliminate this dead food. I'm just going to stick to alive food, like raw food, right? And I started to make at least 50% of my diet raw, unadulterated food that I would get from a farmer's market or a natural food store that nobody processed or touched or put in a package or a plastic bag. And I started to just add that food to my diet. And I remember I found kale and I found all of these awesome fruits and vegetables, and things started to turn around dramatically to the point where now I wasn't overweight. Now I went off every single prescription drug, all nine of them gone. And
Nine
I was
prescription
able,
drugs? Like, I mean, can you even share? Are you okay sharing? Like, what kind
sure,
of drugs they
yeah,
put you on?
yeah. I mean, there was four different ones just to control my asthma. Advair,
I
albuterol,
was on
the
those too.
yeah, and
Yep.
prednisone, and the Zyrtec at the time was a prescription drug. Now it's not, but I mean, just four to control that, right? And I mean, and then all of the different ones that throughout my 20s, when for example, I went to my doctor in my early 20s where I had a really horrible boss that harassed me, and I
Me
remember
too.
I couldn't get to work. I was not sleeping because I was so stressed out and I had so much anxiety about going to work. I went into my primary care physician's office and told her about this. And she didn't say like, "Hey, you should go see a therapist or you should quit your job. You're so young, you'll be able to find another job." Like do it like the normal things, right? Like the obvious advice. She put me on three different psychopatric drugs, right? Ambien, Xanax, and a type of antidepressant, right? So it was like I was like, what is going on here, right? I mean, luckily, I got off of all of that stuff fairly quickly, but I followed my doctor's orders because
Yeah.
I thought it was the only option,
Well, they're
right? And there's so
doctors, so
many
you go them to them because they're trusted.
that's right. And in my culture, again, going back to my Indian culture, all of my aunts and uncles are doctors. Like everyone's a doctor. If you're not a doctor, you're an engineer. And it's like
And they didn't
to
have anything to say, I bet.
and they didn't. No, they didn't. They absolutely didn't. And so it's I was in this situation where you trust the experts.
Hmm.
You don't question the experts. And when I started to do my own research and learn the truth about food and chemicals and pharmaceuticals, my whole life changed. Not only did I stop going to the doctor, which was the best thing ever. I mean, the only time I've had to go to the doctor is to give birth, right? And that's it. I have two children. But I don't go to the doctor, and people ask me all the time, like, Vani, aren't you monitoring like your blood and like checking all your levels and doing this? I thought you'd be so into this. And I'm like, no, I don't need to do any of that stuff. I feel great. I'm eating real food. Like everything is good. Like I don't need anybody telling me anything, right? But Maria, I know your situation is so much different in terms of what you've been able to endure in your life from a health perspective. But for me, like ignorance is bliss to me. It really is because I just feel like I'm able to like focus on what matters and keep going. But when I started to make these discoveries, I started to eliminate chemicals from my diet. Chemicals that, first of all, had no business being in my food. I found out that the majority, 99% of chemicals that have been invented in the last 60 years, have been invented for one sole purpose, and that is to improve the bottom line of the food industry. And
And
when I
that's for a
figured
number
that
of
out,
reasons. That's for things to stay on shelves longer, right?
yeah, so they basically create chemicals so they don't have to use real food, right? So that's cheaper in itself. Then it allows them to keep that food on the shelf longer. It allows them to create addictive qualities to the food, whether it's the texture that they're changing. So you eat it, you consume more of that product before your society brain signals turn on, or it's a flavoring component that tricks your taste buds and hijacks your brain into remembering that flavor over and over again. And so you would crave that flavor. I mean, there's so many different tricks of the food industry on what they do to process and package this. And it's been really weaponized against us. You know, the former tobacco companies bought the big food companies back in the day and used the same science they used to addict people to cigarettes to now food.
I
And then
think
you
that's what
have
you said at the round table, and it got me so. I was like, "Oh my god, that's
it was
crazy!" And if
actually, yeah, it was actually Callie Means, who is an
okay,
incredible advocate. And he talks about this a lot, and I've also written about it in my book, Feeding You Lies. But and then you have chemical corporations that own the seeds that are being planted everywhere in the United States that are coupled with, again, a neurotoxin, glyphosate. So you have the chemical corporations and the tobacco companies controlling our food basically at one point in time in history, or even right now.
which is a
And
horror show.
it is a horror show. It is absolutely a horror show. In 1958, we had 700 chemicals allowed for use in food. Now it's over 10,000. In the European Union, it's still only 400.
It's
So
unbelievable. And we're allowing it, and so that's what's happening. I have to take a quick break, guys. We come back, I want to go into those chemicals, but first, we have to thank the people that help us keep the lights on, Vani, and that is Macy's. So if you guys are feeling like your home could have a little refresh, Macy's has you covered with their lowest prices of the season event. Whether you're in search of seasonal decor, Thanksgiving's coming, guys. I know Halloween's really like coming, but Thanksgiving and Christmas, any of those cozy pillows you want to snuggle in all day, this is your chance to update your space without breaking the bank. The sale runs from October 18th through the 27th. Trust me, those deals won't last. So head over to Macy's.com or swing by your local store to take advantage. And for a little fall fashion style inspo, of course, you can check out my faves in the podcast description. And you guys know the holidays are coming up. We just talked about it, but I've been thinking a lot about some gift ideas because I'm trying to get it done now. And I love using these sales events for it. I think that if you're looking for something special, the gift of hair could be something interesting to share with your friends. Way has some of the really coolest products. My mom used to struggle with frizzy hair forever. She would be like, Maria, my hair is frizzy. What can I do? And I got her everything on the market. She really would have liked this because it actually really works. Would have saved her a lot of frustration for sure, and me too. But if you're looking for the perfect gift, you can treat yourself or treat your friends and family with a good hair day. Head over to theway.com, THEOUAI.com. Use the promo code Heal Squad. You'll get 15% off for happy hair this holiday season. Give the gift of happy holiday hair. Okay, so Vani, these companies, we're at 10,000 chemicals allowed in our country, whereas in Europe they're still at 400. Why does Europe care about their people and we don't, when we are the most powerful nation in the world? Like, what's happening here? Where is the disconnect, and what is it going to take to fix it? Because I know that you are such an incredible advocate. You're out there using your research prowess and your debate skills and your fight and your fury, but one person can't change it all, and we need to change it all now. I'm sorry. It needs to happen faster because it's that bad. What's happening here?
yeah, I mean, in Europe, they require safety data. You actually have to prove a chemical safe before it's allowed in the food system. Here, it's the opposite. It's the wild, wild west. The food companies themselves create these chemicals, and then they sometimes provide the safety data, sometimes don't. They're using their own scientists to create that safety data, so there's tons of conflicts of interest. And the FDA isn't even capable of looking at all the data that is coming into the organization because they don't have the manpower or the resources to do it. And so it's literally like letting the food companies get away with murder and allowing them to just create whatever chemicals they want. I mean, there was a chemical just recently from Terra flour that was implicated in causing people to have gallbladder surgery. This was in our food supply. A very famous smoothie company was using it. And people had to go get their gallbladder removed for almost 2 years before the FDA even did anything about it.
Wait, what smoothie company? You can't say?
Yeah, I can say it's Daily Harvest, but yeah.
So
And
they had a product in their smoothie that was
an ingredient in their smoothie,
and
yes.
how did
That was making
people
people
make the
sick.
connection? How did you make that connection? Not you, but how did people make that connection?
Well, they had to do some research into what ingredient in the supply chain was causing that, and they figured it out. Yeah, thankfully they did. Yes, yes, yeah.
The girls in the
And,
booth had their jaws just
and
drop.
and this is the same thing with red number three, right? Red number three was an ingredient that was banned in cosmetics many years ago, but the alcohol industry lobbied to keep it in food. So it's banned in lipstick. You can't use it in lipstick, but it's allowed in maraschino cherries and candy and cookies and all kinds of things.
Wait,
right?
what?
Because the alcohol industry relied on those little maraschino cherries. Shirley Temples were very popular
Yeah.
at the time, and different drinks with those things, and they wanted to keep that in there.
This is
It's
bananas.
crazy. It's crazy.
So I remember when we were really about like watching movies and stuff. Like we didn't have a kid. When you have a kid, everything changes. You don't have time to watch anything. But
Yeah.
I was a Skittles-aholic. I was a Starburst-aholic. I was the sour strips-aholic.
Yes, me
I
too.
I would eat them till my pores in my head would sweat. I know this is horrible.
Yes, yeah.
I lived on fast food when I first made it in this industry because I didn't have time. I was working 18 plus hour days. The only thing I could do was make it through a drive through and eat while I was driving. And I got really, really sick, and I continuously was getting sick. And then eventually I cleaned out my diet, but it's like it's unbelievable that we've normalized this. And that's why, by the way, Heal Squad exists. Like we're here, we're just trying to learn everything we can and get better so we can get healthier and do better out there. But it's amazing to me that all these terrible chemicals are being marketed to our kids, and they very well know that they are not producing the same product in Europe. So will you explain that to the Heal Squad so they can see? Because maybe they've not seen the videos, like I hadn't seen them until recently.
Right, yeah, absolutely. So American food companies are creating the exact same product overseas with safer and better ingredients than they do for their own American products. So for example, you say Skittles. Skittles, I used to love Skittles too. They have 10 different artificial dyes here in the US, including an ingredient that's banned in Europe called titanium dioxide. It can cause DNA damage. But in the sorry, my little child, he just came in and peeked at me. Sorry.
It's okay.
But he
But
caught
also
me
the
off guard.
titanium dioxide, doesn't that have something to do with formaldehyde?
So no, actually, the formaldehyde ingredient comes from dimethyl polysilicoxane, which you'll
Okay.
find in the United States version of McDonald's French fries.
Perfect.
And McDonald's French fries here have 11 ingredients, whereas in the UK they only have three: potatoes, oil, and sea salt, and a little dextrose. That's it. And the salt is actually optional, so it's three ingredients plus salt, and then 11 ingredients here, including that dimethyl polysilicoxane, which is can be preserved with formaldehyde according to the FDA, a neurotoxin. Okay, it also has TBHQ, which is another autoimmune disruptor in your body as well. An ingredient that you'd find in Reese's peanut butter cups too. You'd find it here in the United States, but not in Japan. So
The girls are crying in the booth right now. Guys, jump in. I want to hear what you're thinking right now.
Oh man, everything that y'all are saying, we're like, no, not. Oh my gosh, we just had McDonald's French fries.
I want to know about In-N-Out because
We can't hear you, Gabby.
Oh, I want to know about In-N-Out because I'll cry, I think.
Or what about Shake Shack? I love Shake Shack too.
Are they all doing it? Is it like all the French fries in America doing it?
Well, all the McDonald's French fries, yes, yeah. And I mean, and Shake Shack, I think, does use dimethyl polysilicoxane too.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's like
Yeah.
it's like all the hard thing is it's like it's everything that you grew up on. It's like this is like and you eat these things and it makes you feel like almost like a kid again, right? It's like that's like and life gets busy and you start and then you hear all of this, you're like, oh my gosh, it's so ingrained
Well,
from like when we were
kids. But I'm realizing that I made it. I started working at 21 or 22 out here, and I was going crazy time, right? By 25 or 26, I had Hashimoto's. So when you're talking about all those hormone disruptors, all those endocrine disruptors, I guess I can blame
So did Gab
that
has
there.
Hashimoto's.
Yeah, I only found out when I was maybe 12 or 13 because my older sister had it and we grew up eating all that stuff. Crazy.
So now are you going to stop?
Oh, yeah. McDonald's is off the list.
Okay.
I got to look at In-N-Out.
Funny, it's so
In-N-Out
hard.
It's funny. They were one of my campaigns. In-N-Out used to use cottonseed oil to fry all of their things in. Yes, and cottonseed oil is not even regulated like a food substance. It's actually a runoff from the cotton industry. So they use a lot worse chemicals that are approved for use under the EPA. And so it's not only genetically engineered to withstand heavy doses of glyphosate, but it's even worse than any kind of food product. And so this is an industrial byproduct that they were using. But since then, since exposing that, I think they've moved to sunflower oils from what I understand. So, but anyways, they used to use that. So,
Wow.
but they were actually they were one of the food companies too that wouldn't tell me the ingredients in their food. I had to like literally, squeeze it out of them to get any kind of information about what was actually going on there. And I think transparency is so important. But going back to this unethical and hypocritical policy that American companies have, where they are choosing to make foods safer and better for people in other countries. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said something so profound in the Senate roundtable. He said, if another country did this to us, it would be considered an act of war. And that's what it is. It's a war on our children. It's a war on our health. And right now we have a company like Kellogg's who targets little children with cereals like Fruit Loops and Apple Jacks and all of these brand new cereals that they create every season, like Baby Shark and Disney's Little Mermaid and Elf on the Shelf and Peeps. And now it's Squishmallows, which is named after a stuffed animal kids love, that they've just released a cereal about that. And they're using artificial food dye here, but they don't use it elsewhere in other countries. And the worst part about it is Kellogg's in 2015 said they were going to remove all of these dyes, and they never did. They said they'd do it in 3 years by 2018. Now it's been almost a decade. They still haven't, and they still create new cereals with the dyes in the Fruit Loops here still have
Why, when
dyes.
they're already creating it, they have a blueprint? It's not going to cost them more to do that. I don't understand.
Exactly. They don't have to reinvent the wheel. It's not like they need a reformulation. Canada Fruit Loops, no dyes. India Fruit Loops, no dyes. All of Europe, the Fruit Loops, no dyes. Australia, no dyes. But here in the US, the kids get poisoned, and that's got to stop. And so I started a petition on my blog, foodbabe.com, to hold them accountable. And now it has over 170,000 signatures. And we are going to be storming their headquarters on October 15th with a massive grassroots campaign to deliver these petitions right to their headquarters. And I've got 4 doctors coming with me, other health leaders coming with me to give speeches and to rally the public around this cause. And we're saying we've had enough. We are ready for our own American companies to serve us the safer ingredients.
Oh, I love that. I'm going to pause us right here for today. But be sure, guys, to join us for part 2 of our conversation, because we're going to dive even deeper into understanding these food labels, finding healthier, more affordable options, and what you can do to help combat this as well. And also, I really want to know how Vani gets her kids to not eat any of the bad stuff, because it's really hard to find like-minded people that are on that journey, as you all know, which is why we're in the Heal Squad. So Heal Squad, come back tomorrow for part 2. In the meantime, be nice people, make good choices, and be present. Hey, Heal Squad. We have been on quite the journey together, and we're hearing from so many of you just how much this show is helping you heal and get better, and it makes us feel so good. We love, love, love it, and we just ask that you don't keep it to yourself. Spread the message and share the show or your favorite episode with your friends. And if you want to help us even more, you can leave us a 5-star rating and a comment on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, and follow us on Instagram at Heal Squad. You can also DM us anytime because we love connecting with you. And finally, you can also join us on Patreon for our monthly live heal events with world-class healers and ad-free episodes exclusive only to Patreon and our Super Heal Squad for as little as $10 a month. So go to patreon.com/Heal Squad to join. Getting better isn't easy, friends, but as I say all the time, it's a whole lot easier if we can do it together. We love you all so much, and we love doing this thing called life with you.
This podcast and all related content published or distributed by or on behalf of Maria Menounos or MariaMenounos.com is for informational purposes only and may include information that is general in nature and that is not specific to you. Any information or opinions expressed or contained herein are not intended to serve as or replace medical advice, nor to diagnose, prescribe, or treat any disease, condition, illness, or injury, and you should consult the healthcare professional of your choice regarding all matters concerning your health, including before beginning any exercise, weight loss, or healthcare program. If you have or suspect you may have a healthcare emergency, please contact a qualified healthcare professional for treatment. Any information or opinions provided by a guest expert or host featured within website or on company's podcast are their own, not those of Maria Menounos or the company. Accordingly, Maria Menounos and the company cannot be responsible for any results or consequences or actions you may take based on information or opinions.